Hi, my name is Ben, and my partners Declan, Bowen, and I decided to do our Project 2 on drinking and secondary education. So to start our project off, we looked at an article written by the Washington Post that talked about the consequences of drinking in school. And it found that more than 80% of college students drink alcohol during their time at school, and 50% report binge drinking in the past 2 weeks. And the reported consequences of such activity include assault, sexual abuse, academic problems, and even injury or death. So when we did our project, we decided to look at two big research questions. The first, what characteristics affect students' propensity to drink in secondary school? And second, does drinking affect students' academic performance in secondary school? And whether or not it does, do any other factors have a noticeable impact? So our data comes from Kaggle. It includes one math class and one language class from two Portuguese schools. Our sample sizes were big enough to be comfortable with running the models that we ran in our study. And some key variables included alcohol consumption, sex, age, among others. One piece of data, one row, included one observation from one student in one of the classes. However, unfortunately, our data was not without a little bit of drawbacks. We had a few issues with bias and validity. Since this was a self-reported study, we thought that students are probably likely to understate the amount of alcohol they drink. And we also had a problem with external validity. Since our sample is from two Portuguese secondary schools, it might have limited external validity. We probably have reason to believe that drinking and study behavior differ across countries, especially since the legal drinking age in Portugal is 18 rather than 21 as it is in the United States.
So here we are now at our Shiny app. On the left-hand side, you can choose between either looking at the math class or the Portuguese class. At the top of each tab, you can find a description of the two graphs below and the variables you can select from. The top graph is a stacked bar chart where you could choose between percent or counts, and you can choose the explanatory variable to look at. On the bottom, you have a box plot, which you can also use the same drop-down menu to select the explanatory variable to look at. And on the y-axis is always the final grade they received in that class. Again, now looking at the stacked bar chart, you can select to either look at weekend alcohol drinking or weekday alcohol drinking, where a 1 refers to them drinking very little during either the weekday or the weekend, and 5 being very high. So for answering our first research question, which is what characteristics are correlated to students' propensity to drink, we saw two variables as being pretty significant. The first one is sex, where we found that on the weekend and weekday, males tend to drink a little bit more than females. And this is similar if we look at the Portuguese class. Also, we found that study time is negatively correlated with people drinking more. As we see here, a 4 means they have a lot of time to study, and 1 being they have very little. And this makes sense, as if you have more time to study, then you have less time to drink, and vice versa. These were the two variables we found most interesting, and we challenge you to find more.
In terms of our second research question, whether or not there is an impact on students' consumption of alcohol on their final grade, we can look to our box plot below the bar graph. When we select either weekday or weekend alcohol drinking in the math class tab, we don't really see a clear relationship with drinking and students' performance in the final grade. However, if we switch over to the Portuguese class and we select weekday alcohol consumption, there is a clear negative trend. As students increase their alcohol drinking during the week, their grades tend to go down. And we can see this in the means decreasing, as well as the second to third quartile distribution decreasing. So, wrapping things up for our second research question, it looks like that for the most part, there wasn't a relationship between students' alcohol consumption and their performance on the final grade. However, in the Portuguese class, we did find some marginal results. Before we leave, we'd like to mention one more thing. We thought the health explanatory variable showed us some pretty interesting results that you might want to look into. And finally, in conclusion, our first research question, looking into the characteristics of people who drink, found that males tended to consume more alcohol than females in both classes, and students who reported more study time also tended to drink less. These two observations were made clear in our stacked bar charts. And for students' impact on alcohol in final grades, looking at our box plots, we found not much evidence for an impact on drinking in grades, except for the Portuguese class and weekday alcohol drinking. We hope you enjoyed our Shiny app, and we encourage you to play around with both the explanatory variable, how to color the bar charts, and whether or not to view the bar charts in percent or counts terms.